Today we're going to be learning Lesson 12, Chapter 3, where we're looking at the distribution of data. The good news is almost everything you're going to do today is going to be using a graphing calculator. The bad news is you're going to have to learn how to use that graphing calculator. And we'll be looking once again at two different types of calculators, the standard traditional one, and we're also going to be doing the same exact things on your Desmos calculator to help you get a better idea how all this stuff works. So, moving forward here, a distribution of data shows the observed or theoretical frequency of each possible data value. Recall that a histogram is a type of bar graph used to display data that has been organized into equal intervals. A histogram is useful when viewing the overall distribution of data within a set over its range. You can see the shape of the distribution by drawing a curve over the histogram. From there, we're going to look at, boom, first type of histogram we're going to look at is one that is going to be negatively skewed. Now you can see that the bulk of the data on that histogram is on the right hand side, and then it kind of just drifts off to the left in small numbers where you can see the tail listed there. So that is something that's going to be negatively skewed because it's kind of drifting to the left, drifting to the negative side, but most of the data is on the positive side. The next type of histogram we're going to look at is one that has a symmetric distribution where the data are more or less evenly distributed. This one, of course, is perfectly symmetrical. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly symmetrical to call it symmetric. For these, as long as what we're looking for is three concepts: negatively skewed, more or less symmetrical, or the other one is positively skewed, which somehow we missed here. So let's see if I can fix that. Alright, now we've got it showing. Our positively skewed distribution is one where, once again, the majority of the data is going to be on the left-hand side, and then you have this tail of small data values drifting off to the right-hand or the positive side. When I say small data values, I'm not meaning smaller numbers, I'm meaning less occurrences of those data values. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our graphing calculator to construct a histogram of this massive set of data. I'm not going to make you watch me put all this data in, but I am going to show you just a little bit as a refresher. Now if you recall, when we left our graphing calculators yesterday, we had a list of data already in it from yesterday's problem. That list is still there. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to clear that list. So I'm going to jump over to my graphing calculator, and I'm going to start off by hitting my stat button, which is right there. And then if you see number 4 says clear list, so I'm going to hit 4. And then from there, I need to tell it what list to clear. So if you remember, your list option is above the stat. So I'm going to hit my second, my list, and L1 is the one I clear. So I'm going to hit L1 and then enter. And now that list is cleared. All right, now that I have the list cleared, it's time to put in the new data set. So I'm putting in my new data set. I'm going to take and I'm going to hit the stat button, which is right here. And then you see number 1 says edit, so I can either hit enter since it's highlighted, or I can just hit number 1, and then you can see list 1 is already highlighted there. Now I seem to recall my first 3 numbers were going to be a 25, enter, a 22, enter, and a 31, enter. Now I'm not going to make you watch me fill out that entire list. I'm instead going to pause the video while I do that, so hang tight with me. So now we have all of our data listed. That's the first step. Painful, but not nearly as painful as trying to do it all by hand as far as drawing out pencil and paper. Now we need to take and set up our window information. So on my window, what we're going to have to do is I had to look at the information that they gave me. And you can see our smallest number here, I believe, is going to be 18. My largest number, I think, is going to be 43. So for my window, I need numbers smaller than 18 and larger than 43. And that is why I selected right here 15 for my X minimum and 45 for my X maximum, because 15 was the smallest, smaller than my least number and for my X values, and 45 was larger than my biggest number for my X value. We're going to come back and talk about this for a minute. For my Y values, remember frequency charts tells you how many times these data values occur. So I just went from -1, because we're not going to have less than that, so we're saving room on the graph, all the way up to 10, because I don't think any of those data values occur more than 10 times. And then the Y scale, once again, we can talk about that later. When we have that all set up, next thing we're going to do is we're going to hit enter, stat plot. We're going to be plotting graph number 1. So you can see right here, now we see when the very top line is turned on. The next options you got, using your arrow keys, you can set it up for a dot plot, a line plot, a histogram. That's what we're going to use. They got box and whisker plots, which we're going to use later. Lots of different options on types of plots there. The list we're going to be doing is 1, and frequency, we're just going to leave that as 1 because I'm not sure what it does. But if I hit my graph button, boom, there's the graph of all that data. Here's the problem. Look at the textbook's answer. The textbook gave us that as an answer for the same thing. That does not match what we did. The reason is they used a different gap for their x-axis. So we are looking at every single time one of those numbers occur, every time 18 occurred, every time 20 occurred, and so on. They ended up doing it into bigger chunks. So I think I'm going to try going back over here, and I'm going to go back to my window button, and I'm going to take my X scale, and I'm going to change that value to 5. And then I'm going to hit my graph button again, and that looks an awful lot more like what the textbook came up with, doesn't it? It's not exactly the same, so I might have got a data value wrong, or they once again may be using a different scale than I'm doing. But that shows you how you can group in blocks of 5, blocks of 10, things of that nature into it. So, all that said, that is using the standard graphing calculator. Now we're going to need to do more, do it again, this time on a Desmos calculator, and I'm going to stop this video and we'll come back and look at Desmos in part 2. Actually, that video was not nearly as long as it felt, so we'll go ahead and knock out the Desmos version of that same problem right here. So for here, I entered my list in the Desmos calculator already, just like we did yesterday. I'm not going to show you how I did that. And then I'm going to hit my plus button in the top left. I'm going to hit my function button, and then I'm going to come down here to the bottom right and hit functions again. Now if you scroll down under visualizations, you've got histograms, dot plots, and box plots. And when I hit a histogram, and what am I doing? I'm going to come over here in the parentheses and hit X. Remember, to get an underscore, you hit Shift underscore and 1, and that allows you to put in your subscript. And that's the same thing we saw earlier when we first did it on our graphing calculator, where the data was all spread out. Well, now instead of doing it all spread out like that, we want to do it in the same groups of 5. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to click bar width right here. I'm going to change that 1 to be a 5, and boom, there's the same graph we came up with on the graphing calculator. Honestly, Desmos is a lot easier to use, and I suspect that's the one you're going to want to use when you're doing yours at home. Most of you probably don't have a handheld graphing calculator anyhow, but you all have access to Desmos graphing calculator. This is where I'm going to take and stop the question. Well, let's see if there's any more information we need to dig out of that first, then we'll figure it out. So from there, what did we see? Oh, nope, we're going to box and whiskers next, so we will save box and whiskers for the next video and get back into it. We'll see you there.